This morning, when I pulled myself out of bed for my usual tea and comics, I had no idea what was waiting for me in that stack. This eye-catching beauty of a book right here, The Death of Doctor Strange, Issue 1. I cannot help myself when it comes to first issues. Anytime I get a bundle of comics in with issue 1s in the stack, I am reading them first. No baggage, no expectations, all possibilities. You don't have to look up what you've missed or spend forever backtracking to understand who or why a character is doing what they're doing. You haven't missed anything yet. It's issue 1. So with hot tea and possible last days of Doctor Strange, I cracked the spine and dove right in. Chapter 1, The Strange Day. And we find Stephen dead, asleep after a long night of occulting. Tarot cards on the floor, record player still spinning, gargoyle statue in the corner. Reminds me of high school. Much like myself, Stephen Strange wakes up in the middle of a thought. His body might have been resting, but his mind was running the entire time. He's thinking about Koschei the Immortal, a Slavic legend of a man who removed his soul for eternal life. At first, I thought it was going to be Wong calling out to him, but no, it's Bats, Doctor Strange's ghost of a basset hound, waking the sorcerer for his morning walkies. No, not the dog's walkies, Strange's, because he's not as young as he once was. Downstairs, Wong offers him breakfast and brings up a very interesting point, that back in the day, Strange spoke with a much more dramatic flair like you would expect from the master of mystical arts to sound, much like an old wizard. But as the years rolled on with his publication history, he slowly dropped that. So for old time's sake, he bids his friend adieu with a boisterous Zounds. On Stephen's walk with Bats, another beloved Marvel pet is brought up. Lucky the pizza dog, Kate Bishop's dog, who I can only hope will be in the upcoming Hawkeye show. And that brings us to the channel's first top 5, Seagon's top 5 Marvel pets. Number 5, Carol Danvers' pet cat Chewy, who they renamed Goose for the movie, which is weird to me since they own the rights to the name. Number 4, Lucky the previously mentioned pizza pup. Bats floats in at number 3. Lockjaw the Inhuman companion is number 2. And for me, the first pet I think of when I think of Marvel Comics is Lockheed, the space dragon familiar of Kitty Pryde. I'm going to throw out a dishonorable mention here to Dogpool, who was disqualified on grounds of being an alternate dimensional Wade Wilson, not a true pet, but also for the chimichanga-sized turd he just left on my carpet. I'm not cleaning that up. Back to the book, Strange continues to think about Koschei and how that myth had led him to become a doctor, the compulsion to save lives and to cheat death. It looks like his hands have healed, and he is back to practicing medicine, but he reminds us that he has never stopped being a doctor. Somewhere in the city, a poor fellow is bursting with energy and power that they cannot contain. Strange talks the police down from shooting him and starts to treat this new patient of his. Mr. Rasputin is a longtime throwaway villain of Doctor Strange and the other mystic heroes. But Strange can see that he is in distress and addresses him more on a personal level as Mr. Plotnik. And Plotnik struggles to tell him that he just wanted to be taken more seriously. He wanted more power, and he has somehow connected himself to the plane of Cinnabus. All that Plotnik can hear are the screams of 1,000 dying voices, so Strange performs a mystical surgery and severs the connection, which seems to have done the trick, but there's no time to investigate further. He is needed elsewhere, at the Strange Academy in New Orleans. Here he teaches the students about the role of the Sorcerer Supreme, how it's not just some self-proclaimed title, but an actual position with powers appointed to him by the Vishanti. He tells us how he maintains a set of magical barriers and spells and so on that he must maintain at all times in addition to everything else that he does. And how he will not be the last, that one day the Vishanti will call for a new champion, or that Strange may die, and a new Sorcerer Supreme will have to be chosen, and it could be one of them there in that room. After class, Doyle, the son of Dormammu, tries to warn Strange that something weird is happening in the other dimensions, that he cannot feel or sense his home dimension, and that that's not normal. He can tell something is wrong, but he is not the first to bring something like that up to Stephen that day. Furthermore, he is called away again before he can take action on that matter. He is called away to help a character known as Magique, Ileana Rasputin, current Sorcerer Supreme of the Limbo Dimension, and sister to Pietro Rasputin, Colossus of the XMen. She needs aid driving back a band of demons that have spilled out of her realm. Throughout the rest of his day, we see Strange battle hordes of beasts, mystic foe after another, never wavering, pausing only to eat a sandwich between jobs. His responsibilities never end. He accomplished more in his time than any other being living or dead. We see that he keeps looking back to a photo of someone that I can only assume is Clea, a very powerful and storied character who's also Strange's estranged Mrs. Clea Strange. She hosts a very powerful and prominent position in the Dark Dimension, which keeps her there and is ultimately what's kind of led them to not be able to be together. And while looking at her, he mentions that Cochet was successful in cheating death at the expense of his soul, and how that's not really living at all. A man without a soul can't really say that he's living at all. And while enjoying his Espen salts and tentacle bath, he is interrupted by a knock at the door. With no one else there to get it, Strange musters up the energy because Doctor Strange may never appear tired. He may never appear disheveled. He must have control at all times. That's part of the persona. And Strange seems to recognize whoever is at the door, but we can't make out who it is. We just see this amazing magical blast, a magic that seems familiar to the Sorcerer Supreme, a power that is somehow stronger than his own, a power that shouldn't exist in his mind. I want to note that even though he is glad his friends are not in harm's way, he still wishes they were there with him. That after everything he has been through and overcome, all the dimensions and planes and worlds that he has seen, he just didn't want to die alone. Chapter 2, The Lonely Death of Dr. Stephen Strange. When Strange falls, everyone notices. It's a sudden feeling, a shift in the balances. Other protectors of the Earth stand by as Strange's protection spells come crashing down. Dimensional breaches are imminent. Wong, Zelma, Brother Voodoo, or Dr. Voodoo as he's now known, either way it's Jericho Drumm, a really rad character akin to DC's Papa Midnight from the Hellblazer series, which is where Constantine comes from, for any film-only fans out there that might just know the Keanu Reeves movie. But then we see the entrance of Baron Mordo, Strange's ultimate nemesis, who is pissed that someone has taken what he believed to be a right, an honor that was his, to be the one to kill Strange. Wong lets his emotions get the better of him, something that he can usually prevent, but not in this state, not this time. He is confronted by Caecilius, Mordo's chief henchman, but they realize that if Mordo is so upset that clearly he didn't do it. And just then, Stephen's Avengers card starts going off. I love that he's using it as a bookmark, by the way. The call is answered by Zelma Stanton, the librarian of the Sanctum Sanctorum, and she learns just how many breaches there are and how they're causing worldwide panic. Lost islands are raising from the sea, dimensions are invading the Gobi Desert. It's not looking great out there. Then, while they're all fussing and fighting amongst themselves and Bat starts howling, we get the conclusion of his thoughts on Cochet, the Deathless. How it was a trick that Stephen was never able to bring himself to perform. However, when he was younger, he did something close. And with a familiar Zounds, we see the only person that Stephen trusts in the event of his passing, himself. And as you can tell from his outfit, a much younger Sorcerer Supreme. And that's where the book leaves us. But we do get a page outlining the upcoming books in this little event, and man, it looks like it's going to be great. This is an ongoing series, so I will do my best to cover these as we go along, because this one's really captured my attention, and I hope it captured yours as well. Let me know what you think about the passing of Strange. Until next time, Zounds! Chapter 3, The Dance of the Warlords. I just want to say that I think that these chapter title pages are really going to make this trade well. I can only imagine that trade paperbacks will become more popular as the digital age of comic books continues. It all starts with Agamon of the Purple Dimension, but soon, Dagoth, Tibero, and Umar all take advantage of the lack of barrier since Strange's death and claim different territories of the Earth as their own. Meanwhile, the new old Doctor Strange, or the older, younger Doctor Strange, Blue Cape, is kind of being examined by his future selves' companions. I'm not entirely sure what a thaumaturgic signature is, but Voodoo, Wong, Zelma, and Bats all agree. He's the real deal. Everyone from Wong to Mordo is requesting an explanation, and Blue Cape tells them that years ago, he severed 1 week of his lifespan and tucked it away safely. This contingency grants the sorcerer 7 days after his death to get his affairs in order. Something that I forgot to mention in the last issue because I probably thought that it was some sort of weird angle or even an artist's mistake, but no, they took his hands! I'm assuming that's important. Unless this was just a way to get him to stop being able to defend himself, I can only assume that whatever's going on required his hands. And as we all know, Doctor Strange is a little sensitive about his hands. Zelma is still holding Strange's Avengers card, and Cap is trying desperately to reach Strange. And I love that once Blue has a chance to explain his presence there to investigate his own murder, Cap just takes it in stride. He's been around the block enough times that it seems on par with superhero antics. Chapter 4: The Three Mothers. Blue Cape realizes that his death means that there is no current Sorcerer Supreme. I don't know if that means that this version of him was made before he had earned that title or assumed that he would have passed the mantle off by now, but either way, he is shocked at the vulnerable state that the world has been left in. Wong snaps his attention back, and Strange assesses the situation. Since the multi-dimensional warlords are not invading populated areas, they are just taking hold of remote territories and not pushing for rule or power. Then there must be something else at work here. As Strange puts it, these are merely symptoms of a cause. Captain America thinks it's best that they speak in person and says, "We're on the way." But immediately, Steven hears someone call out to him. It doesn't appear that anyone else can hear the voice, and from the looks of the speech bubble, I'd say he's hearing it internally, like telepathy. The voice sounds urgent and scared, saying that they need Steven's help and protection, that they're being chased. He makes his way to the street out front of the Sanctorum, just in time to catch her when she falls. Out of the sky and into his arms falls Clea Strange. Blue Cape doesn't really recognize her at first, though he knows that she's the girl from the Dark Dimension, but he doesn't seem to recall all of the time that he spent there. She's freaked out and pulls away. Wong tries to understand what's going on, why she is there, and why are the warlords of the Outer Planes invading, but she tells him that is not it at all. They are not invading, they are fleeing. What could possibly drive the likes of Agamon on the run? The Three Mothers. The Weird, the Crown, and the Crawling. Instead of Doctor Strange, master of the mystical arts like we've grown accustomed to hearing, Blue Cape calls himself the Master of Black Magic, much like Doctor Strange did in his early publication. Okay, I think that gives us enough information that we can in fact pinpoint this version of the Sorcerer to his first 17 issues of appearance. From his first appearance in Strange Tales, issue 110, all the way to issue 127, he is called the Master of Black Magic and dons a blue cape. Up until Strange Tales 128, when we get the red cape and Master of Mystical Arts that we all know and love. The Strange Tales book ran for 168 issues beginning in 1951, with Marvel Comics' then predecessor Atlas Comics, but was rebranded Doctor Strange starting with issue 169 back in 1968. That means that Blue Cape is a year one Doctor Strange. But back to the story at hand. Mordo acts like a true non-friend and vanishes before the fight, vowing to hunt down whoever stole Strange's kill from him. But don't worry, Cap and friend stop by for a chat. I like this exchange between Carol and Tony as they leap into the fray. She feels as if she's stepped into the middle of a show and doesn't understand the plot. But Iron Man tells her, such is always the way with magic. The Avengers clash with the Three Mothers, who bat them away with ease. The Earth's mightiest are thrown about like rag dolls. Weird maps the planet and marks the magical hotspots. Then they pull back, choosing not to kill the Avengers, saving them instead as a feast for their child. Ew, I can only imagine. With the Avengers neutralized and the Three Mothers promising a hellacious return, there's only one thing left to say, and that's, well, Zounds. So in between issues 2 and 3 of the main Death of Doctor Strange miniseries, we get 2 tie-in comics. These are standalone issues from already existing titles that won't interrupt the existing titles' numbering, but they will fill in the gaps of the miniseries. The first of which is Strange Academy Presents. Strange Academy is a book by Scotty Young. It's been running since March of last year, I think. But basically, it follows a set of supernatural teens learning the occults from Doctor Strange and friends. For the older audience, the Academy has an impressive roster of teachers and staff, including Doctor Strange, Dr. Voodoo, the Ancient One, Agatha Harkness, Scarlet Witch, Damian Hellstrom, Wong, and Man-Thing. But the younger readers, you're there for the students, like Doyle, son of Dormammu, Emily Bright, who's a powerful healer as I understand, as well as Alvi and Eirik Borison, the sons of the Enchantress, who are the main focal points of this tie-in issue. In the wake of Stephen Strange's death, the teachers of the Academy felt that it would be best to send the students away until arrangements are made and a new Sorcerer Supreme is chosen. Perhaps they felt like the school was unsafe, while Strange and other mystics are being targeted. But much like Harry at Hogwarts, a lot of these students don't exactly have great home lives to return to, if any at all. And unfortunately for Eirik, he will not be going back to Asgard. He is taken by a gnarly-looking wizard. For an explanation, Alvi tracks down his mother. Keep in mind, this is not Sylvie. This is Amora the Enchantress, the original Enchantress. And Amora is a real piece of work, man, let me tell you. And the ugly truth that Alvi learns is that long ago, his mother made a deal. Well, several deals, involving her firstborn child in exchange for magic relics, artifacts, and other powers. As she explained once upon a time to Doctor Strange, she never really intended on having children, so it was really an easy deal for her to make. But thanks to Strange, that wizard was once turned to stone, as he remained for as long as Stephen lived. Ah, well that explains it. So she convinces Alvi to come with her to Weird World. An interesting dimension to say the least. To find their way to the wizard Pulsari, they must first visit the map makers to get an up-to-date guide for the ever-changing landscape. And we get a new look at what's become of the wizard since his release from Strange's prison. He has been draining the life force of Eirik, and the Asgardian gives Pulsari a lot of strength and power, which he used to conquer Weird World. But poor Eirik is nearly out of time, and the wizard sets his eyes on his replacement, who's coming right to him. On their little road trip, Alvi and Amora get a moment to talk. It seems like that's not something they get to do often. She confesses that yes, she abandoned the boys, that the power that she acquired and how she had acquired it were dangerous. And she convinced herself it was too dangerous to keep them around. And as they talk, it is mentioned how Eirik and their father had a close relationship that Alvi was jealous of. And it looks like the two are about to have a bonding moment when they are attacked by Goletta, the Wizard Slayer. Goletta expresses her duty in killing wizards to protect the land. Enchantress does what she does best, in appealing to a common interest, explaining how they are there to take out Pulsari. Goletta agrees to help them storm his keep when the wizard actually confronts them. Dropping a drained Eirik to the ground, he comes for Alvi. But feeling a sudden rush of motherly emotion, Amora starts blasting everything in sight. With Alvi alongside, they do their best to fight off the wizard's golems, but the boy is suddenly overtaken, but only for a moment. Enchantress frees him just as Goletta takes a risky swing at Pulsari. He laughs at her, thinking that his skin is impenetrable and that it would keep him safe from her attacks. However, she returns the laughter. The joke's on him, because she was aiming for his amulet, the source of his power. Alvi destroys it, and the wizard returns to his previous pathetic state. They stop Goletta from slaying him and instead turn him over to the former rulers of the land that he had upturned, Man-Thing and Queen Blethir. The boys seem to have gained a closeness and appreciation for their unique mother, as she's gained a newfound fondness of them. If you want to know what the rest of the students are up to, check out Scotty Young's Strange Academy. I got to read in a few of these, and honestly, they're a lot of fun. I highly recommend checking them out. The second tie-in is with the Avengers. Years ago at that fateful first meeting of the Illuminati, the one that I covered back in my first video. Man, this meeting is such a profound and impactful moment in comic book history. Before the meeting takes place, however, we see Tony and Stephen having a word about masks and trust. Tony wonders if these apotropic masks really have any magic power. Strange tries explaining that it's more in the way of warding off spirits in their appearance than actually being magic usually. Tony puts it plainly. He doesn't understand magic. He can't solve it with math. It defies logic and therefore represents a world without rules, something that he cannot allow. The only reason that Strange was invited was because the host, the Black Panther, trusts him. and Tony needs to borrow that trust. As a man in a metal suit, he himself embodies everything that T'Challa mistrusts in foreign interests. Still interested, though, Tony asks again if the masks work, even as a ward, to which Strange taps on Iron Man's helmet and asks him the same thing. It's an interesting exchange that lets us know how Tony and Steven felt about each other in the beginning. Back in present-day Florida, we see the cultists of both Tiburon and the Great Agamon bringing a nuke to the nexus of all realities. And as they said it, they are attacked by a hulking red construct that comes out of the nexus. But back at Tony Stark's brownstone, he's doing everything he can to scrub himself clean of the Crawling, one of the three mothers that attacked the Avengers in Death of Doctor Strange Issue 2. No matter how hard he scrubs or how much he scans the suit, he can't shake the feeling that they are still on him. And all he can think about is having a drink. Really goes to show how this is a lifelong struggle for some. But in the other room, the others discuss what they are dealing with and come to grips with the butt kicking that they just got. They check in with Panther, who's been monitoring the different invasions. He tells them that there's a situation in the Everglades, and Carol says that the three of them will check things out, that Iron Man needs a minute. But Tony comes out looking squeaky clean, saying nah, he just needs a sandwich and something for his headache. At the Nexus, they see all the cultists have been laid out by something big. They notice the nuke, and Tony immediately begins work on disarming it. A gross-ass bug crawls up into his suit, reminding him of the Mother Demon, and he uses the clamshell protocol to eject himself from the suit. I don't blame him. Ugh. The others head to Miami to defend against what looks like multiple juggernauts. It takes them a moment to realize that these are constructs, but once they do, the team quickly starts ripping through them. Tony, on the other hand, runs out of time to disarm the nuke and chooses to take it through the portal to detonate. Unsure of what's on the other side, Iron Man steps through the Nexus and finds total chaos. Among the bizarre, he sees a set of legs to someone half in and half out of a portal. Following into their realm, he sees nothing but death and destruction, and a similar spire to the ones that the constructs are trying to build in Miami. After taking the survivor to the psionic spire, Tony sees the message that they are trying to send, and he learns that the constructs are the result of the daughter of Sidorak, the Lord of the Crimson Cosmos, that she is the last remaining person in their world, and she is trying to use her father's crimson constructs to warn the people of Earth of the coming threat, the child of the three mothers. Iron Man rushes back to Earth and flies to Miami as fast as he can, getting there just in time to block Thor's hammer from smashing into the last construct, the one with the Crimson Lord's daughter inside. Tony helps her to the spire, promising the Avengers that it's all right, and lets the girl tell her story to the world. She warns the world that the three mothers are harbingers of death, that the child is already on its way. In fact, it's already there. Things might be too late. Man, these were fun, and I appreciate the character growth for Amora the Enchantress, but I am ready to get back to the main story. Next, Death of Doctor Strange Issue 3, Chapter 5, The Peregrine Child. And we start off at Avengers Mountain, the newest home of the Avengers fashioned out of a several billion-year-old celestial. For the full details on that, check out Avengers Volume 8, Issues 1 through 8. And inside, Blue Cape is presiding over the mystical and corporeal autopsies of his later self. He's enlisted the aid of the esteemed Jane Foster for the physical part on account of his hands. Now this is strange for both of them. Even though Steven is accustomed to out-of-body experiences, this is quite different. And Jane had just recently saved Steven's life from the villain known as the Grim Reaper. And our editor friend tells us to check out Valkyrie Jane Foster Issues 4 and 5, which will fill us in on that comment. Thanks, Darren. Meanwhile, Clea is filling the Avengers in on what she knows about the three mothers and their child. She explains how they are warrior queens who have crossed the dimensions from one plane of existence to the next, and they annihilate everything in their path. No king or queen, no hero, no warlock or warlord has stood a chance. All of that suffering to satisfy the never-ending appetite of the child. The Peregrine Child is an apex thomnivore, feeding off the magics of powerful beings like the warlords and Clea herself. Blue Cape and Foster return with interesting news. He wasn't just murdered, there was a theft. They took his hands, yes, but also his soul and the powers that come with it. With his soul unable to pass on, there cannot be another Sorcerer Supreme. Wong figures that with the warlords of the Outer Planes coming to Earth to hide, it makes their problems the problems of the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and the X-Men. Knowing that if the Earth's mightiest heroes can stop the likes of Galactus, Annihilus, Shumagorath, Thanos, then they must be strong enough to stop this threat as well. With the office of Sorcerer Supreme vacant, there is no one to stop these forces from making themselves comfortable and upsetting the delicate balance of Earth's geopolitical climate. For instance, Iron Man tells us that China tried to nuke Agamemnon, which is where his cultists got the nuke that they tried to use during the Avengers tie-in. He also states that London is in a blackout, and the X-Men along with it, that the United States is getting ready to launch an attack against Kalamesh, and that none of this is even mentioning what's happening with the vampires in Chernobyl. So while the Avengers handle the multitude of threats, Stephen goes off to track his killer and do some avenging of his own. Chapter 6, A Knife of Memory. Back at the Sanctum, Lady Clea commands a spirit to search the globe for Strange's missing items, the only clue that they have to lead to his killer. And while they wait, Blue Cape compliments her technique, and this kind of upsets her. She's not mad at him, but mad at what his later self has recently done. The editor's notes tell us to check out Doctor Strange issue 17, but I think we can do a little bit better than that, Darren. How about checking out the 6-part Herald Supreme storyline, which is found in Doctor Strange Volume 5, issues 12 through 17, for a wild ride where Doctor Strange appears as the Herald to Galactus, and for the full scoop on what Clea is talking about here. But in short, he had to make a deal with the devil to restore the universe, and in turn, the devil took Clea's memories of Stephen, destroying the rekindled romance that they had just begun. And the real kick in the head here is that when Stephen died, the devil saw it a bittersweet twist of the knife to return her memories. And now here a version of him is, though temporary, just as strange and amazing as she has always known, and their attraction to each other runs so deep that they start to have a moment. But Blue Cape just can't have that. He knows that he is not yet the man that she mourns and longs for. He knows that he must solve this mystery, if not for the world, then for her. Just then the spirit Flibbergibbet returns with the knowledge of where the Eye of Agamotto and the Cloak of Levitation are. They are both currently in the Castle Mordo. Chapter 7, Invasive Surgery. At the exact same moment, Castle Mordo in Transylvania and the newly risen Kalamesh are sieged. Strange, Clea, and Wong assault the domain of Karl Mordo, while the three mothers burst into Dagoth's kingdom. Let's take these one at a time. First, the three mothers easily cut through Kalamesh until they find Dagoth sitting cowardly on a throne. The crawling consumes him, and Dagoth calls out to the other warlords, to Umar, Tibero, and even Agamemnon, but they do not come to his aid. They express that they are not his friend and are happy that it's him to fall first and not one of them. The mothers take him away and offer Dagoth to their child, this large, imposing, yet odd-looking creature. Now, I've got a theory, and no, it's not bunnies. I'm pretty sure that these mothers act as a vanguard to the child, not out of any other motivation other than to offer it other powerful beings to consume, sparing their own lives as long as possible. We'll see. Maybe they have greater plans, but I just see self-preservation at play. Back to the drama in Transylvania. As the trio rips through Karl's defenses, Blue Cape expresses his disappointment that he actually believed Mordo earlier. And he says that he did not sense Dormammu's magic on his corpse. Instead, he sensed the presence of all four warlords, meaning that the coward hasn't just sold his soul to Dormammu for power, but he has now sold it 4 more times just to get enough mojo to take out the Sorcerer Supreme. They find Caecilius cowering in the corner and force him to give up his master, who we see caught red-handed with the sorcerer's missing artifacts. But was it really him? We will find out next time. But before we get to issue 4, we have another round of tie-ins, starting with Spider-Man. The issue is, we gotta talk about what's been happening in the wonderful webbed world of Spider-Man. We're gonna pick up with Spider-Man 75 and the current Beyond arc to get us up to speed on what's been going on. See you then.
I've got a theory, it could be Bonnie's.
I've wanted to cover this story for a while, though it's still not finished and we can't follow the thread all the way to the end. What we can do is get briefed up to the Death of Doctor Strange crossover. But basically, Ben Reilly, the clone of Peter Parker, who was created by Miles Warren during the Clone Saga, which was a controversial storyline that really seemed to split a lot of readers, not just in its subject matter, but also the incredible length of the second Clone Saga. Though I really enjoy parts of it, including the character Ben Reilly. So now he shows up in a fancy new suit backed by the Beyond Corporation, who recently bought the Spider-Man trademark from the now defunct Parker Industries from a previous storyline. But before Peter gets a chance to process this, they are both hit with a combined attack from the UFOs, and it is nasty. Ben's fancy new digs allow him to step away unharmed, but poor Pete was just wearing a regular suit, and the radiation overloads his bodily systems, and he is rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, this just seems to be how things go for these two. As one gets stronger, the other one withers, and then when that one flourishes, the other one suffers. Now bedridden, Peter gives Ben his blessing to be Spider-Man, as he is currently unable to fill that role, knowing fully that once he is well, they're going to have a talk about this whole trademark thing. As his first act as Spider-Man, Ben Reilly takes down the UFOs. He also recruits the Daughters of the Dragon to help him train. I actually really like this idea. I always enjoy seeing heroes train with one another, learning and improving their skills. And Ben does have a few things to learn, as he discovered when facing Morbius, who I plan on talking about in the near future. So those are the need-to-knows of Zeb Wells' amazing Spider-Man Beyond storyline, leading up to where we need to be for this tie-in. If you're interested in hearing a fuller and more detailed look at this series, just leave a comment and let me know. I'd love to get into it after we wrap up this Death of Strange series. And that brings us to the issue at hand, the Death of Doctor Strange Spider-Man. Unlike the other tie-ins, this book was written by the main series writer Jed MacKay, who has a well-celebrated history writing for Black Cat. So let's crack the spine. One night, while Peter is in the hospital, Felicia Hardy is sitting by his side when Ben drops in to check on him. She is not exactly warm with Ben. In fact, she blames him for Peter's current condition, speculating that this was all a planned coup. Ben tries to defend himself, but before he could get a word out, the head of the Sorcerer Supreme appears in the hospital room above them. It's another one of Stephen's fail-safes. In case of his death, he has prepared this spell to seek out Spider-Man's aid. Without hesitation, Ben and Felicia both head out to the sanctum for details. I just want to point out that this is the first time that I can recall seeing the sanctum window opening in this fashion, and I love it. I don't know if that's just a regular thing that I have somehow missed or overlooked, or if this is just this artist's interpretation, but it is magical. And Wong tells them that it is indeed true, that the Sorcerer Supreme has been slain. It takes them both a moment to believe him with Blue Cape walking around behind him, but Wong explains that it's complicated and that they're working on it. And while they're working to solve his mystery, they need to ask a favor of Spider-Man. But Wong looks at him closely and proclaims that he is not Spider-Man, to which Ben replies, "It's complicated." And a shout out to Ferreira the artist for illustrating such comedic movement with such thin lines. That's always something that I notice about an artist, is the way that each person depicts movement. But back to the favor. So Wong tells us that in addition to keeping several magical barriers and various warlords, wizards, and ill-doers at bay, he has a laundry list of responsibilities around the city. A list that he trusts Spider-Man to maintain. So Ben and Black Cat swing into action. First on the list is keeping the Gator Shaman and his majestic albino gators in the sewers of New York City. After duking it out for a while, they reveal to the shaman the real reason why Strange keeps him underground: to protect the existence of the gators. He's concerned with how the world would respond to their existence. How would someone like Kraven the Hunter or the rest of the Kravenoff family feel about them? To keep them from being hunted, the shaman and his albino gators retreat back into the dwelling. Number 2, stop the hungry Prince of Hearts from resuming his hunt. But someone's beaten them to it. When they get there, Moon Knight is covered in blood and claims to have already handled it. Moon Knight takes the news of Strange's death rather well, stating that he's died a few times and doesn't recommend it. Then he saunters into the night to do only Khonshu knows what next. I love these little guest appearances because Jed MacKay is also writing the ongoing Moon Knight series currently. And if you want to know more about Moon Knight, check out my buddy Hassman talk about every Moon Knight appearance ever. Our heroes then go on to wrestle a bronze bull, exorcise a demonic train, feed the Central Park dragon, appease spirits, even took out some mummies. And while sitting on a rooftop, they come to realize just how much Strange did for everyone, for the city. And Ben starts to talk about a parable about a village doctor, about how he always checks in on everyone and makes sure that they're healthy and helps them when they're sick, how he's a kind soul who is selfless in his actions. Ben says that healthy people don't really need doctors, only sick people do. So that role over time is taken for granted, and the village doctor starts to become invisible. You don't really think about him, if he has wood for his fire, or if his roof is leaking, or if he's getting enough food. And ultimately, the doctor himself succumbs to sickness and age. But because the village has forgotten him, they don't really notice his passing until they themselves get sick or hurt, and there's no one to tend to them. It's far too late. It's kind of a hard truth in their current situation. And Kat asks him who told him the story, and there's a part of Ben Reilly's hard truth. No one told him that story. Aunt May told Peter that story. And being the perfect clone of Peter Parker comes complete with every one of Peter's childhood memories. I mean, imagine being as self-aware as Ben Reilly, knowing that in a certain sense, everything that his mother ever said to him was actually said to what, like his brother, and he was just in the room? I mean, how twisted of a headspace must that be? But he stays focused and they get back to the list. And after fighting off some goblins, they are at the bottom of the list. One thing remains. And it's not ghosts, ghouls, or goblins. It's not about being Sorcerer Supreme or even a doctor. It is a simple kindness that Steven likes to spread by sharing a pretzel with Jimena Garcia at the end of her night shift. Someone that we learn is a total stranger to Steven. She doesn't even know what he does or who he really is, just that he's always there to brighten her day when it seemed the darkest. During the course of this entire book, Felicia has been saying that no matter how much Ben wants to try, he is not Spider-Man. But here at the end, Ben points out that the world has lost Doctor Strange. And for that, it has one less mystery in it, one less kindness, and that there is nothing he can do about that. However, with Peter in the hospital and the world being without Spider-Man, that is something that he can change. Because with those shared memories, he heard the same words from Uncle Ben about power and responsibility. And to break that down, it means that having such a great ability to respond creates a responsibility. And I'll say that again. Responsibility is the ability to respond. That's what Spider-Man has always taught me. That's what it's always meant to me. It's one person caught in a web of responsibilities. And tonight, Reilly feels like he has filled that void and proven that he is Spider-Man. And Hardy agrees, saying that until Pizza's on his feet, he is Spider-Man. Oh, that's all I'm saying. Just let the lad be who he was genetically created in a lab to be. That's all. Just for a little while, here and there. We all know the return to the status quo will inevitably happen, but let's just sit back and enjoy the ride. Next up, we have the White Fox tie-in. Amy Han is descended from Kumayo, mystical Korean shape-shifting fox spirits, and after her mother was murdered, Amy forged her own path fighting injustice as a member of the Tiger Division and the Agents of Atlas. Amy is the snow-clad hunter with the fury of the white whipping wind and claws of icy hail. She is the last of her kind. She is the White Fox. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't know anything about this character, and I don't think that it would be fair for me to pretend like I do. But what I can tell you is from the confines of this book alone, and that is that after the fall of Doctor Strange, all manner of beasts, demons, spirits, and Oni have been leaking into the dimension. Tiger Division learns that there's been a sighting of a Kumayo. Let me clarify, a sighting of one slaughtering an entire village. Amy believes that she was the only one and decides to investigate. And a former ally, Lin Lai, the sword master, tags along and they confront the fox spirit. I just want to point out that even though I have no clue what's happening or who these characters are, this art is stunning and I am enjoying it nonetheless. The fox spirit claims to be Amy's mother and hypnotizes the White Fox with her mother's presence, but she knows that it can't be her, and with Lynn's help, she sees through the facade and sees the beast for what it truly is. An epic battle ensues. where both Swordsmaster and White Fox suffer injuries. Lyn slides in to block an attack, and his divine blade is shattered into pieces in the jaws of the beast. While distraught, the spirit kicks him, launching Swordmaster off a cliff. Amy transforms into a full-on fox spirit form and straight hecks this thing up. She goes for the throat and then goes to find her friend. Now, I'm kind of shocked that she's unable to find him, that they killed this character off in a tie-in. I'm not gonna lie, part of me kind of wants to look more into this so that I could care more, but I'm also kind of busy. So if you're a White Fox fan, let me know. But I think it's time that we checked in on those vampires in Chernobyl that Iron Man mentioned back in the Avengers tie-in. Death of Doctor Strange Blade kicks off with a beautiful page in 70s color palette which instantly casts the mind back, letting you know that this is a flashback or a recap. This prologue tells us of a time that Blade stood alongside Doctor Strange against Dracula. Turning the Darkhold against the vampire, they were able to kill all vampires in the Marvel Universe. For a time. But that was a long time ago, and now there is a thriving underbelly of vampiric activity in the abandoned cities around Chernobyl. Blade the Daywalker stands guard in the nightclub run by the now revived Dracula. It seems that Blade has taken up a position as some kind of sheriff watching over this dark city, keeping them all in line. And it looks like Drac is having trouble with one of his subordinates, Dahlia, who thinks that now is the perfect time to make a move against the Avengers and a play for control of the world. But Dracula is not considering this. Even with the Sorcerer Supreme dead, he is not pressing any advantage. I think that he is old enough and wise enough to wait and see where the power lies after all the uproar and then plan accordingly. But while refuting her, one of his lackeys brings in some kid, and this kid tells them this horrible and sad story that gets a lot of them feeling very strong emotions, like sympathy. And even Blade is horribly upset at their exploitation of this child for entertainment and plans to put an end to it. Throughout all of this, Dracula has shown no reaction or slightest care. So when Blade steps up to free the kid, Dahlia lashes out, sick of Blade's attitude. And just as they start to throw down, however, Drac appears behind Dahlia and grabs the she-vamp by the throat. Tired of her disrespect, he has her and the kid locked up. But on their way to confinement, the kid shows his true colors. Green. He makes the guards recoil in fear and strikes an alliance with Dahlia. When Blade and Dracula discover the missing prisoners, Dracula reveals to Blade the kid's true nature, that he is a psychic vampire. Drac's seen a few over the centuries. They have an amazing ability to feed off of and manipulate emotion. And even though they are a threat, he has allowed this one to live long enough to drive out his other problem, Dahlia. Out on the streets, a psychic, vamped, pumped-up Dahlia is enraged and attacks Blade. This time, when Dracula appears behind her, he finishes the job. And Blade is left to fight this emo kid who goes full-on Evangelion God mode and starts slamming the Daywalker into buildings and slinging him about. He tosses Blade into a lamppost, which gives him a really good idea. He impales the beast on the lamppost at dawn. The end of the book sees Blade really stepping into his role as sheriff. And the next time someone steps out of line, he doesn't hesitate to dust their ass. It's always nice to see Blade, and I know he's expected to make an MCU appearance soon, alongside the subject of our next issue, Death of Doctor Strange, XMen, and the Black Knight. I have not kept up with X-Men for some time. I know there is definitely a Chris Claremont X-Men related video in the channel's future, but last I recall, they had gone back in time to grab a past version of Jean Grey and a past Scott Summers and pulled them into the future. Though it's been several years since then, I believe that this is the version of Marvel Girl and Cyclops that we're getting here. Along with Polaris, who's one of the daughters of Magneto, X-23, who's now Wolverine, and a personal favorite, Rogue. Now, I'm not going to completely spoil this book. It's honestly my second favorite tie-in in this entire series next to the Spider-Man one, and I want to encourage you to check it out. But some key points are that Dane Whitman has constructed the Ebon Siege, a throne of mystic power that he is able to wield to help direct his daughter Jackie, who is in the field shouldering the curse of the Ebony Blade. The X-Men get possessed and it is a romp. Amidst the action, Dane gets a vision of the three mothers and their child, and he is terrified. Well, that wraps up the second batch of tie-ins to the Death of Doctor Strange arc. I've really enjoyed this story, and the concept of the aftermath of a world without Stephen Strange. I'm not sure if he will return properly by the end of this story or if the Sorcerer Supreme is really gone for a while. Either way, I have enjoyed this send-off and the way that Jed MacKay pulls a character's supporting cast out of the woodwork to show their legacy and also their loss. It all wraps up soon. Chapter 8, Mordo. Baron Carl Amadeus Mordo is a lot of things, but a coward hiding from his lifelong ambition? That's not one of them. He opens the door and tells Strange that he found his artifacts planted in his study moments before their assault. If he had truly fulfilled his deepest desire to end Strange's life, would he really conceal it? Would he not gloat and take every chance to relish in it? And with that, he tosses the Eye of Agamotto and the cape to the ground. It's the same point that he made earlier, but it still holds. Things still don't add up to Mordo. Now back at square one, Blue Cape and friends leave the castle. Chapter 9, Down and Out on Bleecker Street. Back at the Sanctum, the trio speak to Captain America via Avengers card. Cap shares an image of the child captured by British intelligence. It's consuming Dagoth. They realize the gravity of the situation and that with each passing moment, the three mothers could come for any of them, the refugees or Earth natives. Strange mentions the relief of the closure of Strange Academy, for any concentrated group of magic users are currently at risk. And Cap asks how the investigation's going, but Blue Cape confesses the truth. They are out of leads. Blue Cape throws the card in frustration and collapses into a chair, feeling defeated. Wong picks the card up off the floor and offers to deal with the Avengers while Steven works on his next move. I love that Wong rocks traditional robes and Air Force Ones. Where my sneakerheads at? Ever think we'll see MCU Wong in some low dunks? But Blue Cape is at a complete loss as to what to do next. He feels disconnected and out of place. He doesn't recognize the people in his life and feels overwhelmed. He even poses the question, who did he think that he was to believe that this would even work? To which Clea replies that he thought he was Dr. Stephen Strange, master of black magic, and in the moment that he comes from, he truly believed that he could do anything. And she tells him that that's who they need right now. That she believes that that is who he still is, and with a kiss on the cheek, she leaves him to his thoughts. Blue Cape stands there for a moment, alone probably for the first time since he stepped through that portal, when a voice beckons to him from below. It's Bats, who knows that he and this version of Strange haven't met yet or had a chance to talk since he got there. But he still smells like his version of Steven, and Bats asks him if he wants to go for walkies. I really like how things have come full circle, back where our story started, with Strange and Bats out for walkies, which proves to be a very useful way to ponder. And Bats offers a compelling perspective. If someone went to such lengths to frame Carl for Steven's death, which also robs Mordo of his prized moment, then who could possibly have a motive against them both? Who hates both Baron Mordo and Stephen Strange? And Bats says for all they know, it could be someone after Blue Cape's time, but before Bats's. But this all strikes a chord with Steven, and believing that he has a solid lead, they fly off to gather the others. Chapter 10, The Drawing Room. In true murder mystery fashion, they gather all the key players in one location to reveal the killer. They meet in the domain of Umar, Clea's mother. The warlords feign ignorance and posture, willing to hear Blue Cape out of pure amusement. So he gets right to it, recanting the entire sequence of events, and lays it all out like a detective at the end of a crime drama. How under any normal circumstances, the warlords would never team up together, but in desperation, for self-preservation, they could conceive a way to flee to Earth together. Now they wanted to move entire kingdoms. That would require removing the obstacle or enlisting the aid of the Sorcerer Supreme. So what they did was imbued a pawn with their combined powers enough to ritualistically kill Doctor Strange and steal the power of his office. Then, with the barriers down, the warlords could move in. And that pawn is none other than Caecilius. The traitor is caught strange-handed and is about to unleash his power on his foes. But having sensed this immense magical power, the three mothers and child have gathered outside, much to the dismay of the local penguins. It is clear that this is a well-laid trap. The question is, for who? Now, there was an additional tie-in added in between issues 4 and 5 that was not on the original call sheet. I'm not entirely sure why they decided to add it in last minute, but I assume that it has to do with whatever the future of the Sorcerer Supreme will be. So let's crack the spine of Death of Doctor Strange Bloodstone. Elsa Bloodstone is one of those characters with a complicated history. It's been retconned and cherry-picked through the Marvel Now experience, and since so much of her lineage is explained and expanded upon in this book, I'll save her publication history for another time. While fighting some kind of demonic hellhound thing, Elsa notices a meteor in the sky. She races home to Bloodstone Manor, her childhood home, and the remaining inheritance that she and her brother now share. It is explained that the place is in such poor shape because of Colin's condition. He is possessed by a demonic parasite called Glartrox, and they get into an argument. Elsa wants Colin to fix what he breaks, and Colin is upset that his elder sister wants to sell their family home, when that meteor suddenly comes crashing into the manor. Their bloodstones start to react to whatever is coming from inside the meteorite, and they are dragged closer to the rock, which cracks open once they get near, revealing a woman that looks oddly like them, or more accurately, like their father, Ulysses Bloodstone. 10,000 years ago, Ulysses made a bargain. He was distrusting of a growing power of the magical warlord Kraken, so he sought enough power to jail and banish him from the realm, which he was able to do at great personal expense. His firstborn and then only child Lyra was banished as well, along with the Null Gem. According to Lyra, the Null Gem stabilized and amplified the Blood Gem's power. Without it, the Blood Gem is extremely volatile and unstable. Without the Null Gem, the prolonged use of the Bloodstone usually causes extreme madness. Her imprisonment was maintained over the years by powerful sorcerers, and they speculate that her return is a direct result of the death of Doctor Strange. The Bloodstones are not naturally trusting people, as their harsh and seemingly cruel upbringing by Ulysses keeps them on their guard, and that's no different with Lyra. Elsa and Colin's suspicions seem to be justified when in the middle of the night, they find their sister feeding off magical artifacts in the attic. She says that for centuries, wizards and sorcerers have fed her spells, artifacts, and other magic relics to keep the Null Gem satisfied. And Colin sees these items as his inheritance and his birthright. His anger flares up and Glartrox takes hold. He attacks Lyra, and she uses her powers to siphon off Glartrox's power, subduing him and allowing Colin to better control it and even change at will. And while he's out, Elsa gets a chance to learn more about Lyra and her passionate dislike for sorcerers. She tells Elsa that in all of that time, all of those wizards, warlocks, and sorcerers that kept the Null Gem fed and her contained, not one of them asked who she was or tried to help her. And I'd say the reason for that is answered when Kraken the Jailer makes himself known, having also been freed from that binding spell no longer being active. Lyra starts to set a trap, a magical null zone, so to speak. Initially, I think the plan was to banish Kraken there, but he proves much more powerful than they thought. He grabs Lyra, enraged that they would use both gems against him, but this only gives her the opportunity to siphon his magic, and though it nearly overwhelms her, she completely consumes Kraken's magic and nullifies it. Afterwards, they use the Null Circle to pull Glartrox out of Colin and banish him. She offers to show him how to do this so that he can channel and banish spirits at his discretion. And by the end of the book, Elsa has a newfound chip on her shoulder for sorcerers, and the next time she sees the Sorcerer Supreme, she's going to have some questions for him. Now, I think this is an important issue, and the nuance of which we can discuss further in a Bloodstone-specific video, because right now, I am overly hyped for the final issue of this series. Next, The Death of Doctor Strange Issue 5, the conclusion. Or maybe it's just the beginning. Who do you think will become the next Sorcerer Supreme? Will Steven return? Will Wong step up? Perhaps Clea? Or do you think that Bats will finally get his day? Come on, Hound Supreme! Here we are, the conclusion of this series. Now that we know that the murderer is Krusty Caecilius, the real question is how is the gang going to manage to take on him, the remaining warlords, the three mothers, and the child? Let's crack the spine to find out. Chapter 11, Physician, Heal Thyself. As Blue Cape and Caecilius begin their showdown, the warlords discover the presence of the mothers and the child outside. Agamemnon tries to flee, but is blocked from doing so by a powerful binding spell being maintained by Wong and a litany of Strange's allies. It's revealed that Caecilius has many magical wards and protections in place. He cannot be harmed by physical, mental, or spiritual attacks. So when Strange casts a single, seemingly simple spell, Caecilius laughs it off. Why wouldn't he? As far as he's concerned, he's gone from insignificant to invulnerable. Blue Cape knows Caecilius and just what kind of coward he really is. He knew that he would have such protections in place. But what's sad is that with all the additional time this version of Caecilius has had with Strange, he's forgotten the most important part about him. He's a doctor. Blue Cape casts a healing spell, a spell of regeneration, in attempts to revive the original Strange, since his soul still remained and so did a part of him, his hands, which were now bound to Caecilius. By doing this, Caecilius begins to change from the wrists up, changing from the man that he was to the man that he murdered. This process will negate Caecilius's existence in the stead of Strange. And he screams out that this is inhumane, to which Blue Cape reminds him that he is the master of black magic, and when it is necessary, he can be inhumane. And perhaps, in time, he will learn mercy and compassion to aid his bedside manner. But that kinder version of himself was murdered, and Caecilius will pay the price. Zounds! There we have it, folks, the return of Stephen Strange. Though this is far from resolved, they still have a war to wage against the mothers outside. Chapter 12, The Battle of Antarctica. Outside of the palace walls, the trap was sprung. The Avengers and the X-Men lock the three mothers in battle. We see our older Stephen donning the cloak of levitation, deep in thought about his younger self. He doesn't recall being so cold, so calculating. But he was, for sure. Even the MCU version of Strange sacrificed half the universe. But I appreciate that he sees change. Blue Cape lays out the plan and knows that since he has fulfilled his purpose in solving Strange's murder, that he will not survive the battle, and plans to use himself as some kind of final strike. Earth's mightiest are doing their best to hold the mothers at bay, and that's about all they can do. They lay out everything they've got just to keep the mothers from advancing. Then, in the sky above the battle, they see the revived Sorcerer Supreme of Earth beaming with energy, connecting himself to the Sorcerer Supremes of the Purple Dimension, the Dark Dimension, the Sixth Dimension, and Limbo. The five of them band together to banish the three mothers, a combined effort that they cannot withstand. They call out to the child to aid them, to come to its mother's rescue, and with a terrifying glee, it agrees. It uses its powers to push back against the five Supremes, allowing the mothers a chance to continue their assault. But Blue Cape comes soaring in above the battle and straight for the child. He gives Red Cape a few final words of advice and charges their enemy, but the Peregrine Child halts his attempts and then consumes Blue Cape and all of his magical energies. But that was part of the plan. You see, Blue Cape didn't attack in his physical body. No, he was in his astral form. So when the child siphoned his essence, it took him whole. So now inside the beast, he could feel the vast, volatile magic within the child. It would only take a single spark. Red Cape and friends are holding strong and ready to banish the three mothers and the child to the far reaches of the universe. Once separated by dimensions, the mothers would be stranded without their child there to aid them. Right at the perfect moment, the Peregrine Child explodes from within as they are banished from the earth. Chapter 13, The Death of Doctor Strange. In the aftermath of the battle, Clea and Stephen find each other, and he reveals to her what his younger self had said to him. That he was a fool for letting Clea go, for not finding some way to hold on to her, and now that he's been given another chance, he must vow to do so. Clea wants nothing more than to be with Stephen, to have him as her own, not just in her heart, but physically there next to her. And it seems for a moment that they might just get their wish, their happy ending. But Red Cape is older, wiser. more experienced in the ways of magic and the balance of nature than his cool-colored counterpart. Death will come for what's hers. She will not be cheated, even by the Sorcerer Supreme. He begins to fade. As Clea is clinging to him, refusing to let him go, he tells her how he feels, how he will always be with her, but as the only one that he could trust, he must ask of her a great burden. If you thought that Strange would return to his role by the end of this series, then technically you were correct. And if you thought that he would stay dead and that there would be a new Sorcerer Supreme, then technically you would also be correct. And the few of us that thought that Clea would take the cape, well, looks like we too were correct. Man, you gotta love Jed MacKay's story writing for just this reason. All expectations met, a little subversion, but I don't feel like the rug was pulled out from under my feet, mainly because this is far from the end of the story. The end of the miniseries, yes, but MacKay and Ferreira, the writer-artist duo from my favorite tie-in during this series, Spider-Man, will be continuing this story under the title Strange, Volume 3. The first volume of Strange was published in 2004 under the Marvel Knights imprint. Similar to DC's Vertigo, Marvel Knights was a place for Marvel to publish darker and more mature themes. It was a 6-issue limited series, and then in 2010, Marvel main brand published a 4-issue miniseries simply titled Strange. And now in 2022, set for a March release, Strange Volume 3 is booked as an ongoing, not a limited series, meaning that Jed was probably given about 10 to 12 issues to tell an arc or two and see how it sells. And then depending, they will renew the title for more issues into the 20s, and then again into the 30s, and so on as long as it sells. I, for one, am definitely interested in seeing Clea take the spotlight and see her balance the two offices that she now holds, as well as her quest to battle death herself to return her love. And if that's a journey that you want to share together, let me know below. And while you're at it, let me know what you thought of the death of Doctor Strange. Until next time.